Get your hands off that flag, boy. Since when do thugs like you get to play patriot?
I served 22 years for that flag, sir.
I'm gonna shut your mouth. You people always got a story. Only thing you ever served is time.
Please. This is my mother's house.
It's Memorial Day. Don't mean nothing when you look like a threat. Now stop talking.
His mother collapsed against the porch railing, sobbing his name over and over. 6 neighbors stood frozen on their lawns. Not one person moved. And this cop had no idea. He just made the worst mistake of his career. 6 hours before his face hit the pavement, Victor Taylor was standing in his mother's kitchen drying dishes. The morning sun came through the window above the sink. It caught the edge of a framed photograph on the wall. A young man in navy dress whites, standing straight, eyes forward. That was Victor. 20 years ago. Fresh out of Bud/S training. The kind of photo a mother hangs and never takes down. Victor was 44 now. Retired Senior Chief Petty Officer. Navy SEAL Team 4. 22 years of service. 4 combat deployments. 2 in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, 1 he still couldn't talk about. He'd been out for 3 years. Back home in Ridgemont, Virginia. A quiet town with old oak trees and new strip malls. The kind of place where people waved from their driveways and knew each other's business. Victor lived on the east side now, but every holiday he drove across town to Cedar Hill, his mother's neighborhood. Mostly black families. Older homes with wide porches and chain-link fences. The kind of street where someone was always grilling something and kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on. He ran a small nonprofit called Still Standing, helped homeless veterans find transitional housing. The pay was nothing. The hours were everything, but Victor didn't do it for the money. He did it because he'd watched too many guys come home from war and end up sleeping under bridges. This morning, though, wasn't about work. It was Memorial Day, and Memorial Day at the Taylor house meant one thing: Miss Brenda's cookout. His mother, Brenda Taylor, was 71 years old, retired school aide, widowed since 2009 when Victor's father passed. She'd hosted the neighborhood Memorial Day cookout for 30 straight years. Never missed one. Not when her husband got sick. Not when the church roof leaked. Not when her knees started giving out. She sat in her favorite lawn chair on the front porch, directing traffic like a general. Potato salad goes on the left table. Ribs need another 20 minutes. Somebody move that cooler out of the walkway. The whole block smelled like charcoal and lighter fluid. Music drifted from a speaker in someone's backyard. 2 kids chased each other with water guns across the street. Elaine Crawford, the neighbor from across the road, mid-50s, always the first to show up, was setting up folding chairs on her own lawn. Her phone sat on the armrest beside her. She didn't know it yet, but that phone was about to change everything. Victor stepped out the front door holding a folded American flag. Crisp, triangular, the one his family flew every Memorial Day. His father started the tradition decades ago, and after he died, Victor took it over. Every year, same flag, same bracket on the porch post. He wore a plain navy t-shirt and cargo shorts. His dog tags hung under the shirt resting against his chest. He didn't wear them to make a statement. He wore them because taking them off still felt wrong. He crossed the lawn toward the porch post. The bracket was right where it always was. He unfolded the flag, held it up, and started threading the grommets through. 3 blocks south, a police cruiser turned onto Maple Avenue. Officer Dale Crenshaw sat behind the wheel. 38 years old, 11 years on the Ridgemont PD. Buzz cut. Oakley sunglasses pushed up on his forehead. The kind of cop who drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on his belt. He had 3 excessive force complaints in his file. All 3 closed internally. No discipline, no retraining. 2 of them involved black men during routine traffic stops. Crenshaw wasn't a screamer, he was worse, cold, controlled. Every escalation wrapped in procedure. Officer safety, non-compliance, furtive movement. He believed the badge meant obedience, and when he didn't get it, he made sure people understood the cost. Today, he was working a holiday patrol shift. His partner rode shotgun, younger, quieter, the kind of officer who followed and said nothing. Dispatch had flagged a noise complaint 3 blocks from Cedar Hill. A Memorial Day party getting loud. Crenshaw took the call, not because he had to, because it gave him a reason to drive through a neighborhood he liked to keep an eye on. His cruiser rolled north, past the park, past the church, on to Victor's block. Crenshaw saw him from half a block away. A black man, standing on a front lawn, holding something in both hands. He slowed the cruiser, let it roll. The tires crunched gravel near the curb. He didn't hit the lights, didn't touch the siren, just parked. Sat there for a moment, watching through the windshield. Victor didn't notice at first. He was focused on the flag bracket. The screws were old and the grommets didn't line up the way they used to. He adjusted the fabric, pulled the bottom corner tight. Then he heard the car door. He turned. A police cruiser sat at the curb. An officer was walking across the lawn toward him. No urgency, no wave. Just a slow, deliberate walk with both thumbs hooked into his duty belt. "Morning, officer," Victor said. He held the flag against his chest with one hand and gave a small nod. Crenshaw didn't return it. "What are you doing with that?" He pointed at the flag. Victor looked down at it, then back at the officer. "Hanging it up. It's Memorial Day. This is my mother's house." "Your mother's house?" "Yes, sir, I grew up here. I come every year to—" "I didn't ask for your life story." Crenshaw stopped about 5 feet away. His hand rested on the top of his holster. Not gripping it, just resting. The kind of gesture designed to remind you it was there. "You got ID on you?" Victor paused. He was standing on his mother's front lawn, in shorts and a t-shirt, holding an American flag, on Memorial Day. "Can I ask what this is about, officer?" "It's about me asking you a question and you answering it. I'm not driving, I'm on private property. I didn't ask what you haven't done. I asked for ID. You got it or not?" Victor kept his voice even, steady, the way he'd been trained to stay calm when everything around him was falling apart. "My wallet's inside. I can go get it if—" "Don't move." Crenshaw's voice dropped half a register. "Stay right where you are." So Victor stood still, flag against his chest, sun on the back of his neck, the smell of charcoal drifting from the backyard, and a cop 5 feet away who hadn't once asked if everything was okay. Brenda appeared at the screen door. She pushed it open with one hand and stepped onto the porch. Her reading glasses sat on top of her head. A dish towel hung over her shoulder. "What's going on out here?" she said. Crenshaw didn't look at her. "Ma'am, go back inside." "Excuse me?" "I said go back inside. This doesn't concern you." Brenda's jaw tightened. She came down one step. "This is my house. That's my son. It absolutely concerns me." Crenshaw still didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on Victor. "Ma'am, inside. Now." "I'm not going anywhere." Victor raised one hand slightly. "Mama, it's fine. Just—" "It's not fine," Brenda said. Her voice was shaking now, not from fear, from something older and heavier than fear. "It's not fine, Victor." Crenshaw's partner stood near the cruiser. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His hand hovered near his radio but didn't touch it. He said nothing. Crenshaw pressed the button on his shoulder mic. His voice was flat, practiced. "Dispatch, this is Unit 14. I've got an uncooperative black male on Sycamore Lane, requesting additional." Victor heard every word. Uncooperative. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't moved from the spot he was standing in, hadn't done a single thing except hold a flag and ask a question. And now he was uncooperative on a police radio. Across the street, Elaine Crawford heard the exchange from her lawn chair. She picked up her phone, opened the camera, hit record. Her hand trembled, but she held the phone steady at chest level and pointed it at Victor's driveway. Down the block, 2 more neighbors stepped onto their porches. An older man in a veteran's cap, a woman holding a toddler on her hip. They watched in silence. Nobody moved. Crenshaw took one step closer to Victor. "Last time. Put the flag down. Hands behind your back." Victor's eyes stayed on Crenshaw's face. He spoke slowly, clearly, like a man who understood exactly what was happening and wanted every word on the record. "Officer, I have not committed a crime. I am standing on my mother's property. It's Memorial Day and I am a veteran of the United States Navy. I am asking you, respectfully, what is the reason for this stop?" Crenshaw tilted his head slightly. A small smile crossed his mouth. Not warm, not amused, the kind of smile that came right before something bad. "You want a reason?" he said. "Here's your reason. I gave you a lawful order. You didn't follow it. That's all I need. That's not... Put the flag down. Victor looked at the flag in his hands, then at his mother on the porch, then at the neighbors watching from across the street. He took a breath. He didn't drop the flag. He didn't put his hands behind his back. He just stood there, still, silent, holding the flag the way his father taught him, with both hands tight against his chest. It lasted 3 seconds. Crenshaw grabbed Victor's left arm, hard, fingers digging into the bicep. He twisted it behind Victor's back with a sharp jerk. Victor's body reacted before his mind could stop it. His arm pulled back. Not a swing, not a push, just a reflex. The kind your muscles fire before your brain catches up. That was all Crenshaw needed. He drove Victor forward and down, face first. The flag flew out of his hands and landed on the driveway. Victor hit the asphalt hard. His chin split on impact. His cheek pressed against the blacktop. The surface was hot. Memorial Day sun had been baking it since morning. He could feel it burning through his shirt, into his ribs. Crenshaw dropped his knee into the center of Victor's back. The weight came down fast and heavy. Victor's breath left his body in one sharp push. Hands behind your back, now! Victor didn't resist. He went limp, not because he was giving up, because he knew. He knew the protocol. He knew what happened to black men who moved when a cop had them on the ground. He knew that survival meant stillness. His hands went behind his back. The cuffs clicked on, cold metal against hot skin. Brenda screamed from the porch, a raw, broken sound that cut through the music and the charcoal smoke and every quiet conversation on the block. "Victor! Don't you hurt my son, Victor!" Neighbors shouted. Someone cursed. A child started crying 3 houses down. Victor lay still. Blood from his chin pooled on the asphalt near the crumpled flag. His dog tags had come loose from under his shirt. They rested on the pavement next to his face, glinting in the sun. Crenshaw looked down at him, then over at his partner who stood frozen by the cruiser, pale and wide-eyed. "Relax," Crenshaw said. He adjusted his knee on Victor's back. Guys like him are used to being on the ground. Victor lay still, his cheek pressed flat against the driveway. The asphalt radiated heat through his skin like a stove burner turned low. He could feel every grain of it pressing into the cut on his chin. His arms ached behind his back. The cuffs were tight, too tight. The metal edges bit into the bones of his wrists every time he exhaled. He didn't adjust them, didn't shift, didn't do anything that could be called movement. He just breathed, in through his nose, out through his mouth. The way he'd breathed in a foxhole outside Kandahar 13 years ago with rounds snapping overhead. The way he'd breathed when 2 of his teammates went down in a hallway in Ramadi and he had to keep moving anyway. He knew how to survive pressure. That was never the problem. The problem was his mother. Brenda stood on the porch, gripping the railing with both hands. Her knuckles were ash white. Her shoulders shook. She kept saying his name, "Victor! Victor! Victor!" like a prayer she couldn't stop repeating. A neighbor tried to put an arm around her. She pushed it away. Elaine Crawford stood across the street with her phone raised. She hadn't moved, hadn't said a word. Her hand trembled, but the camera was steady. She'd angled it to capture everything. Victor on the ground, the flag crumpled beside him, Crenshaw's knee on his back. The red recording dot blinked in the corner of her screen. Crenshaw stood up. He didn't step away from Victor, just shifted his weight off the knee and stood over him, one boot on each side of Victor's torso. Like a hunter standing over something he'd brought down. He looked at Victor's neck. The dog tags had slipped out from under his shirt during the takedown. They lay on the asphalt next to Victor's jaw, catching sunlight. 2 small metal rectangles stamped with a name, a service number, a blood type. Crenshaw crouched down, picked up the chain with 2 fingers, read the tags, then dropped them back onto the pavement. "Those could be anyone's," he said. "You can buy these at any flea market for $5. Victor said nothing. He stared at the dog tags lying next to his face. Tags he'd worn through 4 deployments. Tags that had been pressed against his chest when a bullet fragment hit his left shoulder in Helmand Province. Tags that still had a scratch from the night his team extracted a hostage in a city he wasn't allowed to name. $5 at a flea market. Crenshaw's partner took a small step forward. He was young, maybe 26. His nameplate was half hidden under his vest strap. His face was pale. "Dale," he said quietly, "maybe we should just... he's not..." "I've got this." Crenshaw didn't look at him. "Go wait by the car." The partner hesitated, then turned and walked back to the cruiser. He leaned against the hood, arms crossed, staring at the ground. Crenshaw patted Victor's pockets. Right side first, then left. No gloves, no warrant, no consent. Just hands going through a man's clothing while he lay face down and handcuffed on his mother's driveway. He pulled out a wallet, a set of keys on a carabiner clip, and a coin. The coin was heavy, bronze-colored, about the size of a silver dollar. On one side, the sealed trident, an eagle clutching an anchor, a trident, and a flintlock pistol. On the other side, the words SEAL Team 4, and a motto Victor's platoon had chosen together 18 years ago. Crenshaw turned the coin over in his fingers, looked at it the way someone looks at a bottle cap they find on the sidewalk. Then he tossed it. It landed on the asphalt next to Victor's face, close enough that Victor could read the engraving, close enough that he felt the small vibration when it hit the ground. A challenge coin. In the military, you earned one by blood and service. You carried it everywhere. If another service member challenged you and you couldn't produce it, you bought the drinks. If you could, they did. It was tradition. It was honor. It was something you never, ever threw on the ground. Crenshaw opened the wallet. He flipped past a debit card, a library card, a photo of Brenda. Then he stopped. Department of Defense identification card. Retired. Senior Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy. Victor A. Taylor. Photo on the left. Rank on the right. Issue date. Expiration date. Everything. Crenshaw stared at it. His jaw moved slightly like he was chewing on the inside of his cheek. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. Then he closed the wallet. Placed it on Victor's chest. Gently. Almost carefully. But he didn't take the cuffs off. Military ID doesn't mean you get to ignore a lawful order, he said. Victor's voice came out calm, flat. The voice of a man who had decided that control was the only weapon he had left. "What order?" "I was putting a flag on my mother's porch." Crenshaw didn't answer. He stood up, looked around the block. Neighbors on every porch, phones raised, silence hanging over the street like smoke. Brenda couldn't take it anymore. She came down the porch steps, one at a time, slowly. Not because she was afraid, because her knees were bad and the steps were steep and she was 71 years old and she was going to walk down them with dignity no matter what was waiting at the bottom. A neighbor reached for her arm. She shook it off. She walked across the lawn, past the folding table with the paper plates, past the cooler nobody had opened yet, past the spot where the flag used to be in Victor's hands. She stopped 3 feet from Crenshaw. She was 5'2". He was 6'1". She looked up at him the way only a mother of a certain age could look at a man, with a fury so controlled it was almost quiet. "My husband served this country," she said. "My son served 22 years. He has bled for this flag, and you will not treat him like this. Not here, not on my property, not on this day." Crenshaw's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, step back or I will arrest you for obstruction of justice." Brenda didn't step back. She didn't blink. "Then arrest me too!" The street went dead silent. Even the music from the backyard seemed to fade. The only sound was the low hum of Crenshaw's cruiser engine still running at the curb. He didn't arrest her. He couldn't. And somewhere under the uniform, he knew it. Arresting a 71-year-old grandmother on her own lawn on Memorial Day with half the block recording would end his shift and probably his career. So he did what men like him always do when they can't win. He called for backup. He pressed his shoulder mic. "Dispatch Unit 14, requesting supervisor at my location, Sycamore Lane." Then he waited, arms folded, standing over Victor like nothing had happened, like a man on the ground and a mother in tears and a flag in the dirt were all just part of the job. 14 minutes later, a second cruiser pulled up. No siren, just lights. Lieutenant Phil Hobson stepped out. 18 years on the force, gray at the temples, the kind of officer who still carried a pocket notebook and wrote things down by hand. He took 4 steps onto the lawn and stopped. He didn't need a briefing. The scene told the story. A black man, face down on the driveway, handcuffed, bleeding from the chin, dog tags on the asphalt, A crumpled American flag 2 feet from his head. A challenge coin lying face up in the sun. An elderly woman standing between her son and the officer who put him there. 6 neighbors watching. At least 3 phones recording. Hobson looked at Crenshaw, then at Victor, then back at Crenshaw. "My office. Now." He said it low, barely above a whisper, but the tone carried the weight of a man who had seen enough. He pulled Crenshaw 10 feet away. The conversation was short and sharp. Hobson's voice stayed low, but his hands moved in tight, controlled gestures. The body language of a man holding back something much louder. "There's no probable cause here, Dale. No dispatch call to this address. No crime. No warrant. No nothing. You're standing on a woman's property with her son in cuffs for hanging a flag." Crenshaw straightened. He was non-compliant. He made a furtive movement toward... "He was holding a flag, Dale." Silence. "Take the cuffs off. Now." Crenshaw didn't move for 3 full seconds. Then he walked back to Victor, knelt down, unlocked the cuffs, stood up, didn't offer a hand. Victor rose slowly. 1 knee first, then both feet. He stood upright and rolled his shoulders back. His wrists were red and raw. His chin was still bleeding. His shirt was streaked with grit and asphalt dust. He didn't look at Crenshaw, didn't speak to him, didn't give him a word or a glance or anything that could be twisted later into something it wasn't. He bent down, picked up the challenge coin, put it in his pocket. Then he picked up the flag, shook the dust off it, walked to the porch, threaded the grommets through the bracket, and hung it. Brenda watched from the bottom of the steps, tears running down her face, hands clasped in front of her chest. The flag caught a small breeze and straightened out. Crenshaw got in his cruiser. His partner was already inside, staring straight ahead. Neither of them said a word. The engine revved once, and the car pulled away from the curb. The block stayed silent for a long time after that. Elaine Crawford's hands were still shaking when she hit the upload button. She sat on her porch that evening, the cookout long over, the street quiet. The video was 4 minutes and 38 seconds long. She posted it with no filter, no edits, no music, just a caption. "This happened today, Memorial Day, Sycamore Lane, a veteran, on his mother's lawn." By midnight, it had 60,000 views. By morning, it had 400,000. By Tuesday evening, 48 hours after Victor's face hit the asphalt, the video had crossed 2 million, and it was still climbing. The clip played on every major cable network. CNN ran it in a split screen next to footage from Memorial Day ceremonies at Arlington. Fox covered it with a panel debate. MSNBC looped the moment Crenshaw threw the challenge coin onto the ground next to Victor's face. That 3-second clip became its own thing, shared, screenshotted, frozen into a single image that burned across social media like a brush fire. But the image that stuck, the one that ended up on the front page of the Washington Post, was the flag. The American flag lying crumpled on the hot asphalt next to a bleeding man's cheek. That photograph became the symbol. People shared it with one word: memorial. Ridgemont PD released a statement that Tuesday afternoon. 3 sentences. "We are aware of the video circulating on social media. The department takes all complaints seriously. An internal review is underway." It satisfied no one. The county DA moved faster than anyone expected. By Thursday, a grand jury had been convened. By the following Monday, formal charges were filed against Officer Dale Crenshaw. Assault under color of authority. Deprivation of civil rights under 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Unlawful detention. Unlawful search. 4 federal counts, each one carrying prison time. Crenshaw was suspended without pay the same afternoon. His badge and service weapon were collected at the precinct. He walked out the back door to avoid the cameras. Someone got a photo anyway. It ran everywhere. A trial date was set for January, and 300 miles south in Virginia Beach, a phone rang in a house with a Navy flag hanging out front. Commander Nate Aldridge, retired, picked up on the second ring. He listened for 90 seconds. Then he said 2 words: "I'm in." Over the next week, Aldridge made 11 more calls. Every one of them answered. Every one of them said the same thing. Dwight Ellis, former sergeant, now a contractor in North Carolina, drove to Virginia Beach that weekend. He and Aldridge sat at a kitchen table covered in legal pads and printed copies of the court docket. They didn't write press releases, didn't contact media, didn't record a single video. They planned, quietly, the way they'd always done everything. Aldridge contacted attorney Russell Grant, Victor's civil rights lawyer, and submitted his name as a witness for the prosecution. The filing was approved within a week. No one outside the legal team knew what was coming. The plan was simple. 12 men, SEAL Team 4. Every one of them had served alongside Victor Taylor, some for 5 years, some for 15. One, Ellis, for the full 22. They would attend the trial, in full dress uniform, service dress blues and whites, every medal, every ribbon, every trident pin polished until it caught the light from across a room. They would sit in the front row behind Victor, and when the prosecution called Aldridge to the stand, the courtroom would learn, in detail, under oath, on the record, exactly who Dale Crenshaw had thrown face first onto the asphalt on Memorial Day morning. Not a thug, not a threat, not an uncooperative black male. A senior chief petty officer, a combat veteran with a Bronze Star with valor and a Purple Heart. A man who had bled for his country more times than most people would ever know. And the 12 men sitting behind him were there to make sure nobody in that courtroom could look away. The courtroom was packed, every seat taken. A line of people stretched down the hallway outside hoping for standing room. 2 sketch artists sat in the front corner. A row of cameras lined the back wall. Darla Hutchins, the local reporter who'd covered the story from day one, sat in the second row with a notebook already half full. Victor arrived in a dark navy suit, white shirt, no tie. His mother walked beside him, one hand on his arm. She wore her Sunday dress, the deep burgundy one she saved for occasions that mattered. Her chin was up, her eyes were dry. They took their seats behind the prosecution table. Brenda folded her hands in her lap and didn't move. Then the doors opened again. 12 men walked in, single file, silent, dress blues and dress whites pressed to perfection. Medals lined across every chest, trident pins, the gold insignia of the Navy SEALs, gleaming above their left breast pockets. Their shoes clicked on the marble floor in unison. No one spoke. No one needed to. They filled the front row directly behind Victor, shoulder to shoulder, hands on their knees, eyes forward. The courtroom went quiet. Not the polite quiet of a proceeding about to begin, the stunned quiet of a room full of people realizing they were seeing something they would never forget. Crenshaw sat at the defense table. His attorney was arranging papers, murmuring something about procedure. Crenshaw wasn't listening. He had turned in his chair and was staring at the row behind Victor. 12 men in full military dress, 12 sets of medals, 12 trident pins. His face didn't crumble, it just emptied, like a man watching the last door close. The trial began. Crenshaw's attorney opened with the standard playbook: officer safety, split-second decision-making, a subject who failed to comply with a lawful order. He used the word protocol 4 times in his opening statement. He used the word threat 3 times. Then the prosecution stood up, and the playbook stopped working. They played Elaine's video first. All 4 minutes and 38 seconds. No edits, no narration, just the raw footage. Victor holding the flag, Crenshaw approaching. The conversation, the demand, the grab, the takedown, the knee, the cuffs, Brenda screaming, the flag on the ground, and the line. Crystal clear on the recording. Guys like him are used to being on the ground. A woman in the jury pressed her hand over her mouth. Then they played the body cam. Crenshaw's own camera. It showed what the phone video missed, the radio call. Crenshaw's voice, calm and practiced. I've got an uncooperative black male on Sycamore Lane. The timestamp proved it was transmitted before any confrontation escalated, before Victor refused anything, before a single order was given. He had called Victor uncooperative before there was anything to cooperate with. Lieutenant Hobson took the stand next. He was brief and precise. No probable cause. No dispatch call to that address. No legal basis for the stop, the search, or the arrest. He confirmed that he ordered Crenshaw to remove the handcuffs because, in his professional judgment, no crime had been committed and no crime was in progress. The prosecution asked one final question. In your 18 years of law enforcement, have you ever seen an officer conduct a stop with this little justification?
Hobson paused.
No, he said, I have not. Then Victor took the stand. He spoke the way he always spoke, calm, measured, quiet. He described the morning, the flag, his mother's cookout, the officer who appeared on the lawn without explanation, the questions that had no good answers, the cuffs, the asphalt, the heat through his shirt. He described the challenge coin, the one Crenshaw pulled from his pocket and tossed onto the ground next to his face. He described what that coin meant, where he earned it, who gave it to him, what it represented to every man and woman who carried one. He described lying on his mother's driveway, hearing her scream his name, bleeding onto the same pavement where he'd learned to ride a bike. Then he said, I spent 22 years defending this country so people could be free. I never expected to be treated like a prisoner on my mother's front lawn. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He didn't need to. Half the jury was already in tears. Crenshaw took the stand in a gray suit that didn't fit right across the shoulders. His attorney walked him through the basics: years of service, commendations, training certifications. He spoke in a clipped, rehearsed tone. Every answer sounded like it had been practiced in a conference room. His attorney framed the narrative carefully. A diligent officer, a holiday patrol shift, a dispatch note about a disturbance, a man who failed to comply with a standard identification request. Then Attorney Russell Grant stood up for the cross-examination. He was tall, unhurried, and carried a single manila folder. Officer Crenshaw, the dispatch note you referenced, what address was it for? Crenshaw shifted. It was a general noise complaint in the Cedar Hill area. The Cedar Hill area, but specifically, the complaint came from a residence on Birch Street, correct? I believe so. And Mr. Taylor's mother lives on Sycamore Lane, 3 blocks north. The area was 3 blocks, officer. Yes or no? Yes. So there was no dispatch call to the address where you made the stop. Silence. Then, no. Grant opened the folder. When you searched Mr. Taylor's pockets, you found a Department of Defense military ID, correct? Correct. You saw his name, his photograph, his rank, Senior Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, retired. I saw it. And after seeing that ID, a federal identification card issued by the Department of Defense, you chose not to release him. He had already been non-compliant with... You also found a challenge coin from SEAL Team 4 in his pocket, and you threw it on the ground, next to his face. Crenshaw's mouth opened, closed. His eyes darted toward his attorney, who didn't look up. I didn't throw it. It slipped. It slipped. Grant paused long enough for the word to hang in the air like smoke. Officer, can you explain why, after confirming Mr. Taylor's identity as a retired Navy SEAL, you kept him handcuffed face down on the pavement? Crenshaw sat up straighter. I followed my training. Your training? Grant took one step closer. Your training told you to throw a decorated combat veteran face down on Memorial Day for holding an American flag on his mother's porch. Nothing. Crenshaw's jaw clenched, his fingers pressed into his thighs. He had no answer because there was no answer. Not one that worked in a courtroom, not one that worked anywhere. Grant let the silence hold for 5 full seconds. Then he turned to the judge. The prosecution calls Commander Nate Aldridge. A chair creaked in the front row. Every head in the courtroom turned. Aldridge stood up from the center of the row of 12 SEALs. He was 51 years old, 6'3", service dress blues pressed to a razor line, 3 rows of ribbons above his left pocket. The gold trident pin caught the overhead light as he stepped into the aisle. He walked to the witness stand with the posture of a man who had commanded men in rooms far more dangerous than this one. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore his oath, sat down. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the sketch artist's pencil moving across paper. Grant began simply. Commander Aldridge, how do you know Victor Taylor? I was his platoon commander, SEAL Team 4. I served alongside him for 14 years. Can you describe Mr. Taylor's service record for the court? Aldridge turned slightly toward the jury, not performing, just making sure they heard every word. Senior Chief Petty Officer Victor Taylor served 22 years in the United States Navy. He completed 4 combat deployments, 2 in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, and 1 that remains classified. He was awarded the Bronze Star with Valor for actions under enemy fire in Helmand Province. He received the Purple Heart after sustaining shrapnel wounds during a compound breach. He was wounded a second time during an extraction operation I am not authorized to discuss in detail. He paused. After his retirement, he founded a non-profit organization called Still Standing to assist homeless veterans with transitional housing. He did this on his own time, with his own resources, in the same community where he grew up. Grant nodded. Commander, are you familiar with the other men seated in the front row behind Mr. Taylor today? I am. Would you introduce them to the court? Aldridge turned toward the row. 12 men in dress uniforms. 12 men who had answered the phone when he called. Sergeant Dwight Ellis, Aldridge said. Ellis stood, straight-backed, hands at his sides. Sergeant Dwight Ellis, SEAL Team 4, 22 years. I served every one of them with Victor Taylor. He sat down. Petty Officer First Class Adam Moore. Moore stood. Petty Officer First Class Adam Moore, SEAL Team 4, 16 years. 3 deployments with Senior Chief Taylor. One by one, Aldridge called their names. One by one, they stood. Each man stated his name, rank, years of service, and time served alongside Victor. Some had 6 years. Some had 12. One, a quiet man at the end of the row with a silver star on his chest, had 8. 12 men. 12 introductions. 12 times the courtroom held its breath. Nobody coughed. Nobody shifted in their seats. The only sound between each introduction was the scratch of the court reporter's keys. When the last man sat down, Aldridge turned back to the jury. This is the man Officer Crenshaw threw face down on his mother's driveway. A man who has bled for this country more times than that officer ever suited up for a shift. And every man behind me would say the same thing. Victor Taylor is the finest sailor we ever served with. At the defense table, Crenshaw's face had gone white. Not red, not flushed, white. The color of a man who was watching the ground disappear beneath him and finally understood there was nothing left to grab. The jury deliberated for 2 hours and 41 minutes. Guilty. All 4 counts. Assault under color of authority. Deprivation of civil rights. Unlawful detention. Unlawful search. Judge Patricia Whitmore delivered the sentence without hesitation. 4 years in federal prison. Permanent decertification. Dale Crenshaw would never wear a badge again. Not in Virginia. Not in any state. Her statement was measured but sharp. She noted the date of the incident, the flag, the uniform. She said that a badge carried an oath, and that oath demanded a standard higher than the one Officer Crenshaw had demonstrated. She said the court would not look away from what happened on Sycamore Lane, and neither should the public. Crenshaw was escorted out through a side door. He didn't look back. Within 48 hours, Chief Daniel Forsyth held a press conference on the steps of Ridgemont City Hall. He announced a full internal affairs review of every excessive force complaint filed against the department in the past decade. Crenshaw's 3 prior complaints, each one closed without discipline, were officially reopened. 2 additional officers connected to a pattern of similar complaints were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. By the end of the month, the Department of Justice placed the Ridgemont Police Department under a federal consent decree. Mandatory reforms, revised use of force policies, bias training with independent oversight, body camera compliance audits, and a newly formed civilian review board with subpoena power. The kind of changes that don't happen because someone asks nicely. They happen because a courtroom full of people saw a flag on the ground and decided enough was enough. Victor filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Ridgemont. It settled 6 months later for $3.8 million. He kept what he needed. Then he donated $1 million to Still Standing. The money funded a second location. This one focused specifically on veterans dealing with PTSD and re-entry. It opened in the fall, 2 miles from his mother's house. The sign above the door read, "You made it home. Let us help you stay. He was invited to speak at the following year's Memorial Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. He accepted. Brenda sat in the front row, in the burgundy dress, with her chin up and her hands folded in her lap. Darla Hutchins, the reporter who had covered the trial from opening day, won a regional journalism award for her coverage. She dedicated it on air to Elaine Crawford, the neighbor who pressed record and didn't stop. The image of Victor's flag on the asphalt became something larger than a photograph. It was printed on shirts and painted on murals. It showed up at police reform rallies across Virginia and beyond. People carried it in marches. Students pinned it to backpacks. A documentary crew reached out to Victor that spring. He turned them down. "I'm not a symbol," he told them. "I'm just a guy who wanted to put a flag on his mama's porch." 1 year later, same house, same porch, same street. The morning sun hit Sycamore Lane the way it always did in late May, soft and golden, warming the pavement before anyone was awake enough to notice. The oak trees along the block had filled in thick and green. Sprinklers ticked across front lawns. Somewhere down the street, a screen door slapped shut. Memorial Day again. Victor pulled into his mother's driveway just after 8. He stepped out of the truck carrying the same folded flag he'd carried the year before. Same creases, same grommets, same faded cotton that had seen more sun and rain than most flags ever would. The driveway was clean. No blood, no scuff marks. No sign of what had happened there 12 months ago. Just concrete and sunlight, and the smell of fresh-cut grass. Brenda was already on the porch. Same lawn chair, same position, a glass of sweet tea on the armrest and a paper fan in her hand, even though the heat hadn't kicked in yet. She looked up when Victor crossed the lawn. Didn't say anything, just watched him the way she always watched him, like she was still making sure he came home in one piece. The cookout was bigger this year. Word had spread. Neighbors who'd moved away came back for it. Families from the next block over showed up with foil-covered dishes and folding chairs. Someone had strung lights between the porch posts. A kid was already running through the sprinkler in the side yard. And there were new faces in the crowd. Dwight Ellis arrived just before 9. He'd driven up from North Carolina the night before. Adam Moore flew in from Texas. 2 more came from Florida, 1 from California. They wore civilian clothes now, polos and khakis and ball caps with faded unit patches. But you could still see it in the way they carried themselves. The straight backs, the steady eyes, the way they scanned a room without turning their heads. 5 members of SEAL Team 4. Standing in a backyard in Cedar Hill, Virginia, holding paper plates and talking to Miss Brenda like they'd known her their whole lives. Ellis found Victor near the grill. He didn't say much. Ellis never did. He just reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a coin. Heavier than a standard challenge coin. Custom minted. On one side, the SEAL Trident. The same eagle, anchor, trident, and pistol that every man in Team 4 had earned with blood and sweat and time. On the other side, a date, the date of the trial, and 2 words stamped into the bronze. Still standing. Victor held the coin in his palm, ran his thumb across the engraving. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he nodded once, slipped it into his pocket, and went back to turning ribs. At 10 o'clock, he walked to the front porch with the flag. Brenda was still in her chair. She set down her tea and watched. He unfolded the flag, held it up to the bracket, threaded the grommets through the way he'd done 100 times before. The brass clips clicked into place. He let go, and the flag dropped straight for a second before a small breeze caught the bottom edge and lifted it out. It didn't wave hard, just a slow, steady pull. The kind of breeze that felt like the world was exhaling. Brenda nodded. That was all. Just a nod. The neighbors started clapping. Not loud, not the kind of applause you hear at a game or a concert. Just a steady sound. Hands meeting hands across the block. Slow and even. Respectful. Victor stepped back, looked at the flag, looked at his mother, looked at the driveway where his face had met the pavement a year ago. Then he went back to the cookout. Here's the thing. Consent decrees and body cameras and policy reforms, those are tools. They matter. They save lives. But they don't work on their own. They work when people demand them. They work when a neighbor picks up a phone and hits record. When a mother walks down her porch steps and refuses to look away. When 12 men put on their uniforms and sit in a courtroom because they want the world to see what justice looks like when it shows up. Service doesn't protect you from prejudice. A uniform doesn't stop someone from seeing your skin before your medals. But solidarity can protect justice. Visibility can protect truth. And the people who show up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, are the reason anything changes at all. The SEALs didn't come to that courtroom to fight. They came so the room couldn't look away. So here's what I want to know from you. If you saw this happening on your street, on Memorial Day, to a veteran, would you record it? Would you say something? Would you step off your porch? Or would you just watch? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit you, really hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Because stories like this don't change things on their own. People do. And that starts with you.